I was just being slightly relaxed about the start time because I'm aware that there's some bad traffic out there, possibly caused by the weather. But I'm sure will be a full complement shortly. I have apologies for absence from Councillor Doe, with Councillor Tijan substituting, and from Councillor Sands, with Councillor Crozer substituting. You may have seen a social media post from our Mayor, Councillor Gurung, who was taken unwell the other day and has been in hospital. So I'm sure you'll all join me in wishing her a speedy recovery, and Councillor Jones is stepping in on her behalf tonight. Moving on to item 2, record of the meeting. Can I sign the record of the meeting held on the 28th of February 2024 as correct? Thank you. There being no urgent matters, are there any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests or any other significant interests? Excellent. So we move on to the petitions report, which is on pages 15 to 20. One petition referral this evening, and the lead petitioner, Mr. Stuart Bourne, is going to speak to us on behalf of the petitioners. So if you wouldn't mind taking your seat and make yourself comfortable. As and when you're ready, the floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for inviting me along. And thank you very much to the responses that we had already to our petition and to the queries that we had. There's still one issue that I wouldn't mind raising. So that's what I would plan to do today. I'd like to come here first of all, and point out that we do recognise the dire financial situation the Medway Council is in. We understand that they were given the situation that they had the hand that were dealt, and we know that there's going to be tough decisions to be made, and no one here elected on the idea that they'll be cancelling free swimming. So we all appreciate that, and we always will do that. But that's why we focused on a child-free swimming, rather than free swimming in general, because child-free swimming has a unique position where you do need an adult to attend. You do need a full-paying adult, potentially two, to attend. So there's always a unique position where there is a chance that you could potentially lose more money than you save by cancelling it. So we did a Freedom of Information request, and over the last 2 years, an average of 10,420 children used the free pass in Medway. Then that assumes that then, if they then do the fee and pay, that's a saving of potentially £54,000. But when you factor in the potential of a single adult, if about 40% of those children do not attend, because for whatever reasons, maybe the financial cost is too high, you can start into the point where you actually start losing more money. And if none of those children attend with their adults, you could potentially be losing £74,000 a year in revenue. So that's why we would like to know what analysis was done by the council in preparation to this, in terms of what loss of potential for revenue would be if adults did not attend. What analysis was done, if it was done, if it wasn't done, why not? And we would also like to look into, because we pointed out there was an opportunity where we could just focus on the free school meal children to attend the free swimming. And the response was very clear that the council puts on lots of very good summer events for children. And that's laudable, but none of them seem to be water-based. And we all live next to the River Medway, and we all know the dangers of water and canal having children. So it seems that we need to make sure that we prepare children for that. So what provision in those summer and Easter events will there be for water-based or swimming-based events to make sure that the children who are at the poorest are the safest? So they're the main issues I wanted to raise today, and I appreciate that. I hope you appreciate that we're coming here as an honest opposition, looking for solutions, not trying to score political points. And again, I would like to appreciate my time and would like to hear the debate.
Thank you, Mr. Bourne. Any member? Councillor Filmer.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the points you raise are very serious regarding the children and the swimming is very important. What I would like to see is the figures that you've mentioned, if we can have some clarification on them, because if it's not as viable as what this is saying, we should re-look at it, or the Cabinet should re-look at the figures and what they've come up with on this. So I'll be quite happy if we could perhaps take this away and look at the figures to make sure we're on the right lines with this. Because there's definitely a difference between what you're saying and what's in the paper, isn't it?
Any other member? Oh, Mark, do you want to come back on that point? Yes.
Sorry, Ed.
Yeah, so just to come back on some of the points of detail, if that's okay. So we can certainly provide further information in relation to the assumptions around the budget position. What I would be at pains to point out is they are assumptions, and there'll always be, you know, an amount of looking at kind of the real world data as to how those assumptions play out and whether we need to tweak or review from there, but we can certainly share some of that information. I don't think it's a sound assumption to say that there would always be a paying adult when a child comes to swim, because free swimming applies to all under 16, so actually, someone that's over a certain age would not need to have a guardian present for them to be able to swim in one of our leisure centres. And that's certainly something that we've had feedback from members of the public who come with younger children, is actually that's not a great experience for them. So actually we lose customers. So there's probably quite a few trade-offs and different ways that you could look at the data and quantify the potential loss. I'm happy to share the assumptions that we've used in determining the proposal that we put to members in respect of the budget.
Thank you. Councillor Tijan.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your petition. Thank you. A question with regards to what cost-benefit analysis did you carry out before arriving at this decision?
Yeah, so we've basically looked at what we think the income lost is from offering free swimming in its current format, and what we think could be achieved with a change in policy. As I committed on the previous question, we're happy to share the detail behind that.
Councillor Cook.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'm also, really understanding of all the comments that have been made, and I think, I really appreciate the comment that was made about the difficult situation and the reality that there are lots of other things in the budget that we wished were there or that need to be there around, making sure that children are protected with social care, that, there's provision in all sorts of ways across Medway. I think from my perspective, that understanding about living near the Medway is a really significant point, but I'm taken back to the national curriculum and the fact that there is an expectation in schools that children should be able to swim. So I'm just wondering about, what else there is that we can do to work with other partners around Medway, such as our schools, to ensure that there's access to wider provision. Because if this is a decision that's needed to be taken for the reasons that's been outlined, the cut of funding that we've spoken about so often, are there other ways that we're also making sure that children do have this safety net by working with our schools? Thank you.
Any other member? Councillor Fern.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think perhaps we can go a step further then and add a recommendation here that obviously the figures are shared, the breakdown and the analysis that has been brought to us there, and then the Cabinet go back and look again at finding this money and providing a free swimming for the children, because 10,350 is a lot. That's a lot of free swims. It's the future of Medway. It's our children, people that we should be developing and watch grow. So I'd like to see us add that recommendation.
Any other member? So I'm not sure from people who've spoken so far. Obviously, from one side of the room, certainly, I think we are relaxed about the idea of sharing that additional information. I'm a little bit circumspect about this, the discussion about referring back to Cabinet, for the simple reason that we had a lengthy debate on this topic at full council. So this was, while it was budget was a Cabinet recommendation, we have had an opportunity to debate this issue at great length and in a recorded vote at full council. So, regardless of the information that comes back to us in that breakdown, I don't think it necessarily changes the fundamentals. And much as we can talk about assumptions of what might happen when this free swimming is taken away, it's no different from the same assumptions that were made when it were introduced. We had no idea at that stage just how many people would take us up on the offer. So I think all of this comes down to sort of theoretical discussions and algorithms and actuarial sort of projections. So I'm not convinced that the recommendation to refer back to Cabinet is supported in any great number, unless any other member wants to tell me otherwise. I'm not sensing that based on the discussion we had at full council. Just on the more practical issue of water safety, and I will declare an interest here because they are my employer, but the National Waterways Charity, the Canal and River Trust, are right now running a campaign for toddler water safety for under fives, on the basis that it's never too early to learn those lessons about water safety. And there's a lot of free resources on the website that I would direct people to tell their young people and their families about, and also to direct schools to them. But fundamentally, the message being to hold hands and take 2 steps back from the edge, which is a straightforward message that children can understand. So I do think the water safety issue is an important one. There are, as I say, there are free resources out there, and I'm not sure that, again, the medium of free swimming at our pools is necessarily going to create a gap in that respect. I think that's something that has to be dealt with much earlier in the process. Councillor Peake.
Thank you, Chair. Been a bit slow here trying to formulate what I wanted to say, but I want to back up what Councillor Cook said. But before I do that, I don't want to distract from the fact that we do recognise how significant this is, and the ability for children to have free swims. We don't take this lightly. It's in the name of being physically responsible and balancing the books, but that doesn't mean we don't recognise that. For me personally, I would like to know the information that Councillor Cook asked for. I'm not sure about the procedure of this, but is it something that we could ask for, an analysis of the amount of swimming that is taught to children these days in schools? I feel completely out of touch. In my day, that was the primary source of learning how to swim. It was every week on a regular basis, and we did qualifications through that system. Does that still exist? So it would help me to know, at least there's that avenue. I'm not distracting from this, but if we could have that knowledge, that would help. Thank you.
I think Mark might be able to help us on some of that.
Yeah, so something we could do is certainly our leisure team will be aware of the schools that bring their children to our centres for swimming as part of a school trip, as opposed to accessing the centre with their parents. So that's something that we can take away and look at. It won't answer the broader question about the curriculum, but we can certainly get a feel for how many schools across Medway are accessing our leisure centres for the children in their schools.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Councillor Peake, that's something that there'll be a great disparity on these days, particularly, over the last however long, with school sports facilities being sold off at a rate of knots, and the council not being in control of the majority of secondary schools where that provision would have previously taking place. So I think, yes, it would be helpful to have that data, but I think the answer will be it depends whether your school's got a swimming pool. And some do, not all. Councillor Peake.
I was interested you say that because I was just trying to, a long time ago, trying to search my brain from when I was that age, as a young kid. The first school that I went to, in what I used to call secondary school, did not have a swimming pool, but they did have an arrangement with the big posh school down the road. It was a bus journey, and they had an arrangement there, and we went. Like I said, we used it regularly. So surely that still can. That sort of system of shared usage could still apply.
I'm sure officers would gratefully receive any offers of assistance that might support greater provision if there are schools that are in a position to do that. But again, my suspicion would be if they were in that position, they probably already do so. Any other member at this stage? Now, I'm not going to dictate terms on this. I'm happy for you to put the proposal. I don't think that proposal to send back to Cabinet is going to come from the Vice Chair, but if any other member wants to make that proposal and support it and put it to the vote, I'm happy to do that.
Chair, Councillor Fearns made that proposal and I'd like to second it.
Okay, well let's put that one to the vote. All those in favour of sending the decision back to Cabinet, put your hand up. Okay, so 6. All against? Okay, so that falls. Vice Chair, do you have another proposal?
Okay, yep, I do. Thank you, Chair. The committee is requested to note the petition responses and appropriate officer actions in paragraph 4.1 of the reports. The committee is requested to consider the petition referral requested at section 5 of the report and the Director of Places response. And the additional recommendation is that the committee is asked for information regarding schools' access of swimming pools in Medway.
Is that supported? Certainly.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So our petition has come with sort of requesting some further information, us to do some further investigation. So what are we going to do for him? How are we going to report this back of our findings? Are we going to do anything with it as a committee? Or are we going to ask officers to do anything with it and report back to our lead petitioner?
So I think the report will be back to this committee in terms of that data, and that will be shared with committee members. I think we can agree that can be sent to the petitioner as well, absolutely. Shall we just explicitly add that to the recommendation, Vice Chair?
Yep, so an additional recommendation that that additional information sought by the petitioner is provided.
Is that supported? Agreed? Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Bourne, and obviously officers will collate that information and share it with committee members and yourself. Thanks very much for coming out on an inclement evening. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, the attendance of the portfolio holder for economic and social regeneration and inward investment. This is on pages 21 to 34 of your agenda reports pack. We have Councillor Edwards in attendance tonight. I think there's an opportunity given to the portfolio holder to introduce the item if she wishes to add anything to the report that's been submitted, and then we can open it up to other members. Councillor Edwards, in your own time.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just be brief so that we have enough time for questions. Just wanted to obviously thank members of the committee for inviting me to come and speak to you, and obviously also want to thank officers who I know have worked really, really hard over the last 10 months when I've been in this post. There's obviously been a lot of new initiatives, a lot of new ways of working across the various portfolio holders, and also a lot of challenges, particularly around the demise of CELOP and our partnership agreements with Kent, making sure they're all in working order, as well as the financial situation that we inherited. So it's been a very busy 10 months, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Any member? Councillor Fulmer.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for your report. we all know regeneration is very important to all of us in Medway, and given that part of our town centre regeneration, a major part of that is done by MDC, a Medway Development Company, are you happy that the progress they're making is they're keeping up to speed, or are they having trouble with their contractors, with delays and things like that? And the second part of that question is, given the market at the moment, the house sales market, are they in a viable, profitable position, or are you happy with the way the finances are on MDC? Thank you.
So thank you for your question. It strays a little bit more into Councillor Khan's brief than mine, to be perfectly honest. I do sit on the MDC board that we have. We've only met once for an introductory meeting, having sort of fixed some of the governance concerns around MDC and a number of the other similar boards under the previous administration. So, I certainly obviously work very closely with the other portfolio holders that are particularly relevant to my work. So that is Councillor Khan and also Councillor Curry, and to some extent also Councillor Marhill. So we are very joined up, and I'm certainly not aware of any concerns around delays in terms of MDC's work or in terms of the broader market. But as I said, it does stray a little bit more into Councillor Khan's portfolio than mine.
Any other member? Councillor Jones.
Thank you very much, Chair. I have a couple of questions to the portfolio holder. One of the great things about serving on a unitary authority is one is able to drill down into the detail of what is happening in our town centres and the surrounding areas, and also look at the strategic issues. And that is one of the interesting features I've found about being on this authority from time to time over the last few years, 20 years or so. So I had two questions, if I can put them both together, Chair. I wondered what consideration the portfolio holder was giving in terms of local shopping areas outside main town centres. A couple immediately spring to mind, and I've no doubt colleagues could think of a number of others. But I'm concerned about our economic development recognising the need for support for local shopping areas outside town centres as far as possible within the available resources. Darnley Road, Strood, is one that springs to mind, and the Dels Road, there are a number of shops as well. So I wonder if the portfolio holder had any thoughts on that, Chair, and if it's okay if I put the other question now. And I was wondering to what extent we consider in terms of our inward investment strategy, it's that part of the report I'm focusing on now, the regional picture. The portfolio holder, Councillor Edwards, has outlined the closeness with which she works with other portfolio holders, but I'm concerned about the Thames Gateway, our role in that, our links with Essex, and particularly the unitary authorities in Essex. And, are we looking at the wider regional picture in terms of our inward investment? And those were my two questions, Chair, but I did want to comment favourably on what Councillor Edwards has done in terms of town centres particularly, and the setting up again of the Strood Town Centre Forum. And it's evident from the report that a lot of work is being done, has been done, but I had those couple of questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. I'll take those in the order in which you gave them. So absolutely recognise that the parades of shops are really, really important. They were a particular lifeline, I think, to a lot of people during the pandemic, and I think it's fair to say that they do need a bit of love. You've obviously mentioned Dels Road, which is in my ward, and obviously aware of Darnley Road as well. I think quite rightly, the first aspect of regeneration that I focused on is the town centres, particularly aware of it being one of our election pledges, so it has to be a top priority for us. I've got a couple of strategies, as you'll have seen in the paper, around inward investment, which I'll talk to in a moment, and also particularly around a market strategy to grow our markets and get them on a more financially sustainable footing, and also street trading as well, where that's appropriate in our town centres. So as much as I would like to do a whole host of strategies that I have in the back of my mind at the same time, I do have to be mindful of the resources and the strain on officers. So it's absolutely my intention that after particularly progress has been made on the inward investment strategy and the markets and street trading strategy, that we then turn our attention to the parades of shops. I have done a little bit of research in terms of, what focus there's been on parades of shops, particularly from a government level. All I could really find, to be honest, was a government paper from the very early days of the coalition that doesn't actually seem to have gone anywhere. It seems to have just sat on a shelf. So although there's not necessarily anything proactively happening at the moment, it's absolutely on my radar, and I expect to have something to deliver by the end of this election period. In terms of your second question, I was quite shocked, to be honest, to get into post and to realise that we didn't have an inward investment strategy as a council. So I've been really clear that that is a priority for me, absolutely within my job description, that I need to be bringing more businesses and getting more investment into Medway so that we can grow our local economy and we can create really good quality jobs. So I've secured some money. Unfortunately, the South East Local Enterprise Partnership will shortly be closing. That is one of the vehicles through which we engage really closely with other people within the South East. So Essex is a prime example, as well as Kent County Council. But we're absolutely committed to working with them again in future. There's a lot of issues in the economic and social regeneration space that aren't ones that we can necessarily all deal with as local authorities, whether that's county councils or districts or unitary. There are some things that we need to be looking at as a whole, as a region. That's particularly the case in Kent. So that work will continue, but there will be some funds coming through to us from the demise of CELOP. The exact amount is still to be determined, but that's absolutely going to give me and officers the opportunity to resource an inward investment strategy. And, in doing that, I really want to focus, obviously, on the long term and also what I know that our existing strengths are. So I'm very familiar that, the creative industry is one of the fastest growing areas in Medway in terms of job growth and economic growth. Food and drink is another one. We've got a really rich engineering history. And I'm obviously also looking at the potential for green jobs. We've got some quite exciting businesses already out on the peninsula that are operating in that space. So absolutely want to be supporting that. And I think we also need to make the most of the fact that we are so close to London. We obviously have quite a thriving sort of film sort of area, and we could absolutely grow that as well. So I think that piece of work is a priority for this year, and we will obviously make sure that we are plugged into everything that's happening at a broader regional level, but also, to be honest, focusing on what we know our strengths are, what we know are the future growth opportunities. And I look forward to doing that work with officers throughout the next 12 months.
Thank you, Chair. Good that the portfolio holder is focused on the strategic and the detailed stuff. Thank you.
Councillor Peake.
Before I start, may I say how pleasing it is yet again that a portfolio holder has presented a report that has succinct, to the point paragraphs, therefore making it easy for somebody like me to read and understand. I do appreciate it. It's also really great. Your answer to Councillor Jones' response, I find that really galvanising. I also would like to say how pleased I am to hear how you've got so many ideas. I mean, it's potentially very exciting times. And as a supporter of SMEs, and I have a desire to make it as possible for them to flourish as easily as possible, thereby obviously contributing to growth, increase in employment, and the necessary paying of taxes. So I would like to reference page 23, 4.9, the commitment to support small businesses led to Medway signing the Federation for Small Business Local Pledge. And, it's great to hear that about 14,000 local businesses and so on. But my question is how pleased are you with the response? I'm just wondering, do you think I assume that you're very pleased with this degree of response, but is there greater capacity? Do you think there could be even more enthusiasm to get from these people? And I'm kind of generically asking you about your late relationship with them. How well was it going? And what hope you have for that? My second question goes to the next point, 4.10, when it talks about the relaunch of the Kent and Medway Business Fund. Obviously I haven't been part of this council, and I just find it surprising that this is something that needed to be relaunched. It's had a £600,000 take-up. Again, how satisfied are you with how much of the take-up? Is there, again, do you think, more take-up that could take place? Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I'll take those in the order in which they were asked. So, we still have a really good relationship with the FSB Kent. I had a coffee earlier in the week with one of their regional leaders who's really, really pleased. He's particularly pleased around, a relatively simple measure within the FSB Local Leadership Pledge, which we signed within the first 50 days of the new administration, because we wanted to send a very clear signal that we were an administration that was open to business and supportive of small businesses in particular. We have 14,000, as I think the report says, businesses in Medway, and 90% of them are small businesses. So it absolutely has to be a priority for me. We've taken simple steps, so made it easier for businesses to get in contact with us. So, for instance, I'm a central point of contact for anything in terms of, as a portfolio holder, but there's also a named officer, Sean, who does fantastic work, and it just makes what I certainly hear from businesses is instead of whereas previously they often didn't know how to engage with the council, or they were often sort of punted from person to person, having us very visible as two people who are out attending events, who very freely give our contact details and are very reachable, is really, really beneficial, because it just means they can get help with whatever they're needing ASAP. They're really enthusiastic. We've got a forthcoming summit with Kent FSB to just talk through, the progress over the last year and what we want to do in future. In terms of the work that we've done, they're very happy, obviously, about us dedicating resource and time to grants for small businesses. So you'll see information in the report around the grants that we've given through Partners for Growth, so helping existing small businesses to grow and to employ more people and to take more market share, but also helping businesses get off the ground as well. So that's certainly going to be an area of focus, is particularly going into schools and trying to encourage entrepreneurship. I think that's quite an exciting program. We've also helped, in terms of the document, when you sign up to the Local Leadership Pledge, there's a very clear document that signals what the FSB would like to see, and a lot of what we're doing is reflecting that document, and, we were already in that space. So, for instance, around giving grants to companies to allow them to start their journey towards net zero is a really important development. And I certainly know, in terms of future work, I've very clearly signalled that we're going to be looking at how we provide apprenticeships, and that I'm very conscious that a lot of small businesses don't feel that they have a role in terms of, taking on apprentices. So I want to have the voice of small business part of those discussions about where we want to take our apprenticeship program, and also in terms of our procurement policy. So we had a cabinet paper, I think it was maybe just a few weeks ago, which talked about some sort of grading us on how our procurement policy was doing. We had very favourable results in terms of how we engage small business. We'd had a significant improvement in a couple of the metrics over the previous 12 months. But I've also sort of clearly signalled to officers that, I want, as our procurement policy policies develop and are refined, I want small businesses to be a key part of that, because it obviously makes perfect sense for us as a local council to make sure that we're supporting as many of the small and local businesses that we have here in Medway as possible through our supply chain. And then in the other question, in terms of Kent and Medway Business Fund, so we were involved with it previously. There was a relaunch, which I think would have happened anyway. But my understanding from speaking to Sir Paul Carter over at KCC, who sort of heads it up on behalf of the administration there, is that Medway had fallen out of sort of engagement with it over the last 4 or 5 years. So I was very keen early in the administration to meet with him and to get Medway back involved in that, because obviously we all know that we're in a tricky financial environment at the moment. Bank loans, are not easy to get, and the interest rates are very high. So I really wanted to make sure that we could give Medway businesses access to these 0% interest-free loans, basically, that can be paid back over about 5 years with a 6-month payment holiday. People have absolutely jumped at the chance to take that on. The council's marketing team and comms team has done a very good job about making sure that the Medway business community knows about that. And just in the last 2 weeks, obviously it's subject to the various checks that need to happen, but I can certainly see that out of those 2 meetings that I had over in Maidstone, one for the larger loan scheme and one for the smaller loan scheme, we had applications, very strong applications from 2 Medway businesses. And I think off the top of my head, if they were to go through, we would be generating, around from those 2 applications, 10 or 12 extra jobs in Medway. So it's absolutely key to economic growth, allowing our companies to grow and to create new jobs. And, I really look forward, to be honest, although it means a lot more meetings for me, I think it's really worth it in terms of just making sure that our businesses have access to all of the funding opportunities, grants, and very favourable loans so that they can continue to grow and succeed.
May I say, Chair, thank you for such an uplifting and excellent response.
Any other member? Councillor Tijan.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your report. I need to declare interest, actually. Page 25 make mention of the Innovation Centre Medway, and I'm a director of a company that has a registered office at Innovation Centre Medway. The small businesses really are the bedrock of our economy. And I'm glad to see in your report that you've mentioned that we have 14,000. I mean, the number 14,000 has been around for quite a while. I think since first got elected on the council, we're talking about 14,000 businesses in Medway. Now, my question is, what are we doing proactively to retain and improve that number? Because, there's risks of businesses that, I talk to business owners who say they are at risk of ceasing trading or moving out of Medway. And I just wonder what the portfolio holder is proactively doing, what engagement are you having with businesses like the one right next door, the Chatham Docks, to try and make sure those employment are protected here in Medway.
So I obviously won't be getting into the Chatham Docks scenario. That's obviously a local plan issue, and I don't want to be predetermining anything on that front. But certainly we were doing everything that we can to support our existing businesses. That's why we focus not only on helping people start businesses, we also make sure that we're helping them to access finance and to grow, because we know that's absolutely key to us having a resilient local economy. In terms of the specific number, I'm very aware of that, actually, of the need to make sure that certainly within, me as a portfolio, that I'm tracking progress against the targets that I have set myself and that we have set ourselves as an administration. So as part of our sort of internal monitoring, we look at, key performance indicators as to how we can track how well we're doing. And I want to make sure that they're as robust as possible. So, for instance, I don't think particularly around town centres, we've always had data around what the vacancy rate is, but I've also asked for ones around how many jobs that we are creating for the time period of the administration, and also around how many new businesses that we know are being established, so that we can track progress, because only when you are capturing that kind of data can you understand whether you're heading in the right direction. So that will obviously be taken forward as part of our internal monitoring, and something that I will be keeping an eye on, and hopefully next time I come next year I'll be able to provide some of that data.
Councillor Etheridge.
Thank you. I've got quite a number of questions here, so I'll ask one and then get an answer and move on to the next. So, first of all, thank you very much for your report. You mentioned within the report that you're going to have a markets policy to enable and promote street trading activities. So I was wondering how you're going to promote the market in Strood if you close the car park in Commercial Road opposite McDonald's, because there'd be nowhere for the customers to park. And will there be a potential increase for stallholders if this initiative is successful? That's my first question. I'll let you answer, then I'll come back.
So I'm not entirely sure I caught all of that. What I understood was around, you wanted a bit more information around the markets and the street trading policy, and then particularly around the establishment of a Strood market. Is that right?
I'll just say again, how are you going to promote the market in Strood if you close the car park in Commercial Road opposite McDonald's? Because there'd be nowhere for customers to park. And will there be a potential increase for stallholders if this initiative is successful?
Okay. Okay,
Just
so
to
I've got that
clarify,
now, thank you.
Are we clear on what you mean by an increase? What do you mean by an increase, Councillor Etheridge?
Well, I'm sure the portfolio holder can answer that for
Well,
herself.
it would be helpful if for the whole committee, if you could understand what you mean by that.
Stallholders' fees. In the same way,
Fees.
there's the fees for the Christmas market traders are going up.
Thank you.
So yes, so in general, the markets policy, which is being worked on at the moment, and I hope will have progressed to a decent extent by the summer, is all about growing our markets. And I have asked officers to look at re-establishing a Strood market, because I know it's very popular. As Councillor Jones mentioned, we've restarted the Strood Town Centre Forum, and there was certainly appetite from the people who were there to have a market, because they understand that it drives footfall. It can be quite an exciting thing to have, and it's much missed, is my understanding. So I have asked officers to look at that. I have also asked them to look at how we get all of our markets across Medway that are already there on a more financially sustainable footing. And that does mean considering other locations outside of car parks, because as you quite rightly say, there's an issue around parking, but there's also an issue around the financial viability of our markets. They're immediately uneconomic if they are always held in car parks, because the lost revenue is factored into the sort of the cost-benefit analysis of having a market. So I have asked officers to look at how we could have different locations across the town centres to get away from that. And in terms of increases for existing markets and stallholders, that really hasn't been anything that we have discussed. It has been more around a general strategic point from me around making sure that we are doing everything that we can, and we're considering all the options to make them more financially sustainable. I've also asked for a sort of minimum level of standards across all of the markets to make sure that they're all being run in a proper, robust way, and that things like public liability and health and safety are all being considered properly, how we can grow them, and also how we can potentially encourage external providers to open markets as well. So it's sort of in its infancy at the moment, but that's certainly the strategic direction that I have set. And obviously, I will leave officers to go away and do the detailed work, and hope to be able to, bring forward a markets policy to Cabinet, and then potentially full council in due course.
Thank you. Next two questions are regarding the town centre forums, especially in Strood. We've spoke at length at the forums in regards to people extending their business onto the public highways, such as the forests. And we've also spoke at length about the many times we find vans and trucks and lorries parked on the pavements. It's going to cost the council eventually a fortune in repairs. Additionally, you also refer to using 106 funding to replant and maintain planters in the Christmas ground tree works. But what 106 funding was there for that, and what development actually produced that 106 funding?
Is this a specific reference to a paragraph in the paper?
It is 6.63, 106 funding to replant and maintain planters. So I was interested to know what development those contributions came from, and obviously the town centre forums of their success. And when we discussed it at the town centre forums, we've discussed the amount of parking that takes place, and also the businesses extending their stores onto the highway of the pavements, which currently the council has got a policy against that to occur.
Yeah. Okay, so on the second part of your question around the specific Section 106 funding, I think that predates the administration, or it certainly predates any understanding I have of where that particular money's come from. So I'm happy to revert to you outside of the meeting in a written way to give you that information, unless any officers here know the information, but I'm not necessarily.
Sonny, can you help?
Apologies, I'm sitting right next to you. I couldn't quite hear it. 6.6.3.
So I'm happy to, I'm happy to take that away. That'll be, I'll liaise with the planners on that, and we can take that away as a response. Yep.
Well, continuing on, to be honest, I was quite disappointed not to see any reference for the following documents which are required for the local plan, which are the sustainability appraisal, habitat regulations assessment, duty to cooperate, air quality management, area action plan, area-wide travel plan, and river strategies, which were all your predecessors' responsibility, or do they no longer come under your portfolio?
So I'll go back to the second part of your first question that you asked, which I think was around businesses going out onto the pavement. So that's something that's, I think, a little bit more in Councillor Osborne's brief, but that is being factored into the street trading, street licensing review that we're doing. So one of the things that I'm particularly interested in and have seen done successfully is things like food vans and those kind of businesses in town centres where there's a space and where it's appropriate. So that's something that we're looking at in order to diversify and strengthen our town centres. But as part of that, we absolutely have to look at regulation around the pavement licensing for businesses, because we obviously don't want to be obstructing people. We want that to be a proper regulated environment. So that will also be picked up as part of that review. And then in terms of the other pieces of work, I think it's important to point out that the job roles and profiles that both myself and Councillor Curry have do not directly match onto those by the previous portfolio holders. So although I'm absolutely involved in the river strategy and making sure that the economic development team is involved, which sits in my brief, is involved in those discussions, that businesses around the marinas are involved in those discussions, that does sit within Councillor Curry's portfolio, and I believe you had some discussions around that when he was held to account. So I would just absolutely plugged into the local plan progress that we're going through, and obviously I'm very key in terms of leading on employment sites, but it doesn't necessarily map to the previous administration. So there are distinctions, which is why you're not necessarily seeing some of those strategies being raised in this report.
Okay, thank you. The next question has been partially asked by my colleague here. But when in opposition, you followed your leader's opposition to the changing of the industrial status of Chatham Dockyard, and from that of being residential to being from being industrial to residential. Is that still your view? And if so, how are you feeding that information into the local plan working party and the new Kent and Medway economic framework?
So once again, I'll reiterate my previous comment that I won't be getting into specifics in terms of the local plan. There's a very robust process for that, and we need to make sure that we're following that and all the consultation stages for that. So I'm afraid I won't be getting into that in this meeting. I don't want to predetermine anything.
Okay, so I'll follow that one up yet again, because you said you're very much plugged into the local plan. Mm-hmm. So since the formation of the local plan working party, it's never met. So potentially none of your proposals or initiatives are being discussed and evaluated. So how do you balance that against your statement that you're fostering growth and innovation whilst providing support to businesses, along with the statement you just made that you're very much plugged into it?
So I meet fortnightly with a number of other officers, and including the planning officer and the other 3 portfolio holders that are relevant for these discussions, as well as the chair of the planning committee. We meet fortnightly to go through the plans, the developments, where we're headed. So when I say that I'm plugged into it, it's through those particular meetings. And obviously, we are now going to go through additional stages for the local plan around consultation. And obviously, members will have the opportunity, as will the public, to provide their views during those stages. But, we meet regularly to discuss the progress on the plan, because we do have very tight timescales, and we have to make sure that we're meeting them. Because as an administration, we have very publicly said that we will deliver a local plan by the end of 2025, because we need to, because otherwise we are subject to speculative house building, and nobody wants to be in that scenario. We want a very clear plan that's got support from the public, and then we can get on and build our employment sites, we can build housing where it's appropriate, and we can get on with the job and stop this current situation where we have a local plan that's over 20 years out of date. When I say that externally to people in the local government field, they're absolutely appalled. So we need to get on with it, and we are.
So what you're basically saying, there is a secret second subcommittee for the local plan that members who are supposed to be on it don't attend and know nothing about. But thank you very much for your answer.
What I said is that there are operational level discussions that happen regularly to ensure that the local plan is on course. And we are on course, and those will continue, and obviously we will go through the appropriate stages. There's no secret committee. It is an operational matter with the involvement of portfolio holders, as it should be.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. I think those of us that were actually listening to the answers are well aware of what you said. Councillor Nestorov.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, thank you for the presentation. It was very informative, and for me it shows that there is desire to work with all organizations in Medway, universities, the Dions, the church, and other organizations, businesses, of course. Firstly, I have to say that the high streets are very important for everyone. And I was really happy to see that you have re-established the Stroud Town Centre Forum, which we know that it really needed re-establishing. I often hear from residents that talk to me that some high street used to be prioritized by the previous administration, and some of them were totally overlooked. The report shows that there is a new energy that you have brought in for more inclusive approach, that all of Medway high streets are looked similarly. Additionally, I want to say that sadly, due to the UK economy being in ruins, we see more and more businesses being closed down, big and small. We have so many examples in the last 6 months, like Wilco, and so many examples. And I'm also just want to know that I'm happy to see that you're working actively towards occupying the spaces that were left unoccupied, like the Chatham Pentagon and Debenhams. I personally think that the high streets need to evolve and diversify the usage of the town centers if they are to remain viable. I see that you're doing a lot in that direction, but my question is, are there any specific type of businesses or services we are looking to encourage to make our high street more resilient for the future? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, I mean, in some respects, these things are open to the market, but there's certainly businesses that we want to try to encourage. So, for instance, a markets policy, a vibrant market scene across Medway is very useful for helping sole traders who can then develop a customer base and then continue on and potentially have premises. So, you know, that's one vehicle through which we would encourage it. And also, I think we just need diversification of our high streets. You know, I think I've always supported a mixture of residential as well as businesses, but we also need things for people to do in our high streets. I think diversification is the key word here. We can't have it all housing, we can't have it all retail. And so things like the Innovation Hub, which will create more co-working spaces on the first floor of the Pentagon, alongside an NHS Healthy Living Centre, are absolutely key to firstly supporting the businesses that are already in those locations, particularly on Chatham High Street, but also, you know, getting the footfall into those particular areas. So I think in general, we're just looking to create a supportive small business environment. We don't necessarily want, there are particular national rules, for instance, with vacant shops, which maybe leads to you having more charity shops than you would otherwise. That's a national picture, but certainly we work very closely when we have vacant buildings, and Wilco is a perfect example of trying to get those filled very quickly. When they do become vacant. There is obviously some progress still happening with some of them, but, you know, I was really pleased that, you know, we were able to get B&M to open in Rainham. That's been a real big success. People are really happy that that's had a really positive impact on local businesses. And as I mentioned previously, we do, you know, closely monitor vacancy rates across all of the town centres. None of ours are anywhere near the national average in terms of vacancy rates across the country, which is a point of comfort, but we absolutely can't rest on our laurels. And one of the things I'm, you know, particularly conscious about is the empty properties that may have been empty for quite some time on high streets. And I'm very pleased that we will shortly be recruiting for an empty properties officer, so we can have somebody who is going to be very proactive about dealing with some of those sites, because they can be very unsightly. They can unfortunately give an impression of an area sort of not being on the up. So, you know, I'm hoping that we can progress some work in that area over the next 12, 24 months to really tackle some of those areas, because it's absolutely key to our high streets being the best that they can be.
Just want to come back. I agree with that. Usually when you have a vacant building somewhere in the center of towns, it brings more antisocial behavior and more crime, because people think, like you said, the area is not on the up. My question is, I had actually a funny conversation recently on the doorstep with a parent that have 3 teenagers, and she was complaining that there is not much to do for teenagers, not many activities. Is there a way maybe to look into something, not just for young children, but for teenage children, some place that they can feel safe and that they can actually enjoy themselves?
So, I mean, youth services isn't technically within my provision, but I absolutely agree with you. Particularly teenagers having things to do is really important to keep them on the straight and narrow. And I know certainly after the pandemic, you know, I used some of my ward improvement funds just as a local councillor to get the Rochester youth group back up and running for that very reason. So, you know, although it's not technically within my portfolio, you know, I do work closely with officers who operate in the kind of youth space in terms of what the council provides, and I'm always very happy to consider how we could make town centres you know, safer places for everybody. And, you know, antisocial behaviour is everywhere, but there's particular hotspots, undoubtedly. I think there's a real issue in Chatham, which I think everybody recognises. And that's why one of the things that we're going to pursue, if there's business support for it, we certainly know that there's support amongst Chatham Town Centre Forum, is a business improvement district. So this is where you'd have a referendum amongst businesses, and they would pay a small levy, but they would have control of the funds and be able to sort of invest and spend them how they want, reflecting the fact that they have an understanding of what their local town centre needs. And the leader of the council and I and a number of officers have done a number of visits over the last 10 months to places like Maidstone and Reading to understand how this works. And certainly every time we've had a discussion with businesses and the people who are involved with the BIDs, business improvement districts, it's been very clear that having officers who are walking around paid by the bid, who are basically security guards, is the number one benefit that retailers and customers feel that they've got through the business improvement district. So we're doing a feasibility study using Year 2 UK SPF funds to see if that is a viable option across Medway, with a particular focus on Chatham. And obviously that will be subject to public consultation and business appetite. But I certainly think that, particularly when we're operating in a context of heavily reduced numbers of police because of the cuts that have been made to the budget that Kent Police has, they are fulfilling a very important role in a lot of town centres about making people feel safe. So that's absolutely key to my plans to regenerate town centres, because we know if people don't feel safe, they won't come, they won't spend money, we won't have the lively town centres that we all want. So Chatham's a bit of a pilot there, and I hope we'll be able to progress that in the next 12 months.
Councillor Bowen.
Hi, I'm just looking at on page 27, the paragraph about achievements in Rochester Town Centre. There's no reference to the Shared Prosperity Fund for Year 2. I was just wondering why that was.
That's because they didn't apply. So despite the fact that they had people who were in attendance at the launch of the meeting, unfortunately they didn't put in an application, and we need to be very mindful about the reporting that we have to do to central government about how we've allocated the funds and the processes that we've gone through. And I'm also very conscious that a lot of I had a huge number, I think it says over 60 applications there that I had to go through. Obviously they went through a very robust moderation process with officers first, and a lot of places put a lot of time and energy into applications, and unfortunately we weren't able to support everyone. I would have liked to have, but unfortunately if the application isn't made, I can't support it. But as I said at a recent full council meeting, we are absolutely encouraging them to put forward an application for this forthcoming year's UK SPF, and I hope all the town centre forums will consider that, because one of the things that we want to be doing as a council is not doing things to people, but working with them and giving them the funds so that they can do things based on local need. That was certainly the driver behind the allocations that we gave for those who put in an application. And as you can see, there's a great list of activities and public realm improvements that have gone through with the various forums, and a lot of that is because they got the funds, and we empowered the town centre forums and the local businesses and the residents who take part in those forums to really say what they wanted to see in their community, because we obviously have our ideas, but we wanted to empower them to very clearly say how they wanted that money spent. And I'm hoping that we will get lots of exciting applications in the forthcoming year of UK SPF.
Councillor Field.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. And thank you to the member for a comprehensive report and a really interesting session. Just really interesting to hear some of the questions put in. Interesting to hear support for potential red route in Strood Town Centre there. Something that actually, maybe we do need to investigate in that particular area. There to ensure, as rightly, the maintenance of our road services, and hopefully to attract a future market. I note with pleasure that the Strood Town Centre Forum has been restarted. That's a really positive event, and I notice I would like to note this Thursday's events in the town centre, and I know there's also a similar event this week in Gillingham, and it's really good to see that positive support. The one negative in Strood Town Centre, however, that we have seen over the last few months is the loss of banking facilities. And we know it's not just Strood that impacts on. I've been speaking to people across Cliffwoods and in Who, and that there's been a real desire to actually make sure that we have access to counter bank facilities. And for instance, I I spoke to a gentleman who on Sunday who was describing in great detail the difficulty he's got in accessing banking facilities. He's a carer for his wife who's got severe Parkinson's, and the fact that he has to travel to Chatham and the traffic, you know, getting over to Chatham, have been able to park, is real difficulty. And I know that you have put in an application for some shared banking facilities through the Link Consortium, and potentially, you know, we could explore some sites there. So I just wanted to give you an opportunity to provide an update on that and about how we're working to ensure that local communities are accessing the banking facilities that they need.
Thank you for that question, Councillor Field. I mean, it's absolutely vital that our residents and our businesses have access to high street banks. It's really disappointing that we've had 2 recent closures on top of the previous closures in Strood in particular, because I think the Lloyds and the NatWest have either already closed or are about to close. So I'm very conscious now that at the moment in Strood you have one building society, and that's all that's left. And I think there's a real danger if all of our banking services are just in Chatham. And certainly I know that with some of the closures, people, particularly in areas on the peninsula, were being directed to Gravesend as well as Chatham. And you know, there's very poor, unfortunately, we're going to try and change this, but there is not great public transport on the peninsula. And I think Strood and the banking shops that were there were very vital, like you say, not only to people who live in Strood, but also I know they're used by people in Cuxton and Horling, they're used by people on the peninsula, they're used by people in Rochester. So it is a huge issue, and unfortunately one that is replicated across the country. There's nothing unique to Medway. But there are these banking hubs, and they operate on the basis that you know, they're not necessarily replacing everything that was done, but it does allow people on set days to come in and speak to somebody in a bank face to face about a particularly complex banking issue. You know, people don't necessarily want to be doing loans on online banking or telephone banking. A lot of people aren't necessarily up with that kind of technology. They want to have face-to-face banking, and I certainly know, speaking to people in Strood, that there is a huge amount of appetite for that and a real concern about how people in the area are going to access banking services going forward with these closures. So as you've said, I'm very keen, and I think I said it at a recent full council meeting as well, very keen to have one of these link banking hubs opened in the area. And in terms of an update, I do have a conversation. I think I've got a meeting in the diary over the next few weeks with somebody from Link specifically to talk about how we can get one in that particular area. You know, what are the roadblocks? How do we make it happen? Because I think it's really important that we preserve some level of face-to-face banking, because customers need it, not everybody, but a significant amount of the population do, and I don't think it's right that people should have to travel you know, really far distances to access, you know, what should be quite basic banking services.
Councillor Peake.
Thank you, Chair. Before I ask my specific question, I would like to say how pleased I am regarding your response to the point that Councillor Nestorov made about the effect of closure of businesses. I personally bemoan the demise of Debenhams because I actually shop in there a lot. And I know this is an emotion. This is in Chatham, by the way. My emotion was, oh my goodness, this does sort of signal a decline in Chatham during the time that I've known it. And I think, as we are all aware, an area can very easily get a negative reputation, and dare I say, the wrong type of business can be attracted. So I'm glad that you have recognised how important it is to regenerate these areas and get the right type of business in place. My question is with regards to small businesses. It's quite a well-known fact that a small business will suffer not only from non-payment of fees, but actually even when they do get paid, it's the delay in being paid. This can actually lead, that alone can be a significant factor in leading to a business closing down or at least downsizing. So my specific question is, what's in place to help businesses like that. But before you answer, I would also like to dispel the idea, the notion of some kind of conspiracy of secret conversations going on. When the business people meet together, I am sure that they will need to know that they can speak freely and they do not want to be reported verbatim what they are saying. And I am very, very confident that we will see the positive results of these conversations in a future report. Thank you.
So absolutely agree about the issue of late payments. I think that's probably one of the #1 challenges that people mention throughout the small business space. And one of the things that I'm obviously very conscious about that is within our gift is to make sure that we as a council are not delayed. As I mentioned earlier, it's very important that we have small businesses within our supply chain and do everything to maximise that. I'm equally aware that we need to make sure that we are paying any local suppliers in a timely way. So that's absolutely something I'm very conscious of and want to make sure that we as a council are practicing what we preach and behaving properly. So absolutely that is something that I will continue to monitor. And we have very full and frank conversations with businesses. We have a number of business engagement events that we hold. We have a regular Businesses for Medway meeting, which tends to be some of the larger ones, to make sure they're aware of what's going on. We also have regular business meetups, networking events that we run with the Federation of Small Businesses Kent, also the Kent Invicta Chamber of Commerce. So we're very visible in terms of engaging with local businesses, and they're very full and frank with us about what they need from us. Sometimes they're challenging, and we welcome that challenge because we obviously want to be getting all kinds of feedback so that that we can improve and that we can continue to create a really supportive environment here in Medway for all of the businesses that we have.
Any other member? In which case, Vice Chair, do you have a proposal?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to...
Mr. Councillor Crows are there.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Councillor, for your report. I just wonder whether, I'd just like to pick up on something that Gary mentioned about the...
Councillor Crows, you try and activate.
Is that okay? I'd just like to pick up on something that Councillor Etheridge was mentioning about the local plan working group. As you know, we've been asking your leader to get representation on that group. And I find it strange to learn that the group, is it up and running? Is it there? Is it going to be up and running? What is the situation with the local plan working group? And I'm happy for you to come back to me with that. I'm not looking for you to tell me now if you don't want to.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be happy to have a discussion. So that is more in the leader's gift, and it's also Councillor Curry who leads on the local plan. I'm obviously involved because particularly my portfolio around employment sites is very important, and obviously the broader piece around regeneration. So yeah, very happy to come back with you on the specifics in terms of that, but not specifically within my portfolio in terms of that particular group.
Thank you. Any more for any more? Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Simple recommendation here. The committee asks to note the report.
Is that supported? Yes. Agreed. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Edwards, for some very full answers there and for giving us your time this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have item 7, the Highways Infrastructure Contract Annual Review. That's on pages 35 to 84 of your agenda pack, and Michael is going to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep this brief, as members obviously have the report and the appendix in front of them. The Highways Infrastructure Contract Annual Review looks at what's been achieved over the contract year, and that is up to July 2023. It provides an overview of our collaborative partnership with Volker Highways and provides highlights on some of the work undertaken, which is in accordance with our Highways Asset Management Policy and our Asset Management Strategy. Very pleased to have Jerry Pert here from Volker. And obviously we'd be very happy to address any comments and questions that members may have. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Etheridge.
Thank you. Thank you for your report. Within the report, you list the advantages of using WMA. But we also know HMA is far more weather resistant and resilient. So are we looking at disadvantages with WMA needing further repairs or more often, or being repaired more often?
I mean, the advantage, sorry, you're talking about the warm asphalt in there, are you? Yes. I mean, the advantages from that, from an environmental point of view and low carbon, I don't think it's been used long enough to be able to give substantial data and comparison with HRA, but the line that Medway Council were taking is very much in line with the other highway authorities in the country. But I see no reason why we should expect to see any more defects with warm asphalt than HRA.
Any other member? Councillor Nesterov.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a couple of questions. First one, on page 39, it says that 2022-2023 allocations for Medway, a grant from the government, equals to 3.1 million from different, like, few funds. I saw that this number is for year 2022-2023. Is there a way to get more current number for this year's?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, obviously we have details of capital funding, which I think is what you're referring to. The funding we get from DFT. So as you quite rightly point out, in 22-23, which is the year covered by this report, our total funding was 3.177 million. And that was a reduction of about £1 million compared with 2020 and 2021. But that situation has recovered a little bit, and we're due to receive around £3.5 million from the DFT for 24-25. So obviously that gives us some more flexibility in terms of allocating funding.
Okay, which leads me to my next question. Further down it says that we spent around 13.5 million for 2022-2023. So if the funds from the government equal to 3.1, was the rest covered by the council?
We need to come back to you on that question, if that's okay. Thank you.
I have one more. It's on page 52. I saw that the pothole inspection is formed by several factors. What I don't understand is why the visual inspection, the maximum score for pothole is 280, which will classify it as category 1. What I don't understand, why the visual inspection gives a maximum score of 125, while the safety gives a maximum score of only 35. Because I think this could introduce human error to the equation. And my question is, how did the scoring came to be? Who decides that?
Sorry, Councillor, could you just clarify the page you were referring to, please?
It's page 52. No, sorry. Yeah, 52.
Just to clarify for members, that's page 52 of the report pack and page 11 of the Volca Highways report.
Good evening. The inspections are based on visual inspections by our highway engineers. We also have scanner data that provides some of this for the points values as well as CVI, which is course index. Sorry. we have a, I'm not very good at this.
That's all right, carry on.
We have scanner information, engineer assessments, and this is all based on pre-approved criteria. We've been using this for a few years now.
Is it a government criteria or is it from the council?
So it's from the highways team.
Because I just want to come back to that. For me, it seems like it would be more productive if we have a criteria that scores on road usage. Let me elaborate. Some roads are used by far more people than others. For example, if you have a pothole on Watling Street or Maidstone Road, which experience heavy traffic and hundreds, even thousands of cars per hour, shouldn't it take priority over a pothole that is deeper, but it is located in a cul-de-sac that have only few cars per day?
Thank you, yes. Yeah, I can clarify that. We are looking at changing how we repair our resilient network, which is exactly as you described, really. It's the key strategic routes in Medway. So we prioritise repairs on these routes, and we tend to carry out permanent patching on those to add longevity to the carriageway asset. So you're absolutely right, we do prioritise in that way, and we prioritise our resilient network.
Thank you.
Councillor Cook.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the report. It was fascinating because obviously nearly a year in for those of us that were newly elected in last year, these are probably the biggest areas of concern for many of, the kind of inboxes and the things that people are concerned about in their daily lives. Two bits that came out to me specifically. One that follows on from what we've just been discussing there. At the top of page 53 around priority one sites and how we decide what's a priority. The statement around most likely to be included and focusing on priority one sites. Is there any metrics that says of all the roads that we've looked at, of all the issues that we've looked at, there is this number of priority one, of which we can only do this number. And there are this number that were almost as bad, but not quite, because I think, there are so many concerns across Medway that we're just not doing enough. And so, as I was looking at this, I can see how much is being done, I can see the work that's been doing in the prioritisation, but how can we reassure people that, this is the caseload of which we can do X? That's my first question. Shall I go on to my second?
I think if it's okay, Chair, I'll just cover that one off. Obviously, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, we have a £500,000 reactive maintenance budget. Now, what that does is that means we can eliminate the risks to the travelling public. But what it doesn't necessarily mean, it doesn't give us the flexibility to actually improve the overall condition of the network. So that is a big challenge for us. And of course, the 1.4 million funding we get from the DFT obviously helps us with the planned maintenance and resurfacing roads, but that only covers a really small percentage of our overall highway network. So yes, it is about prioritisation, but that is in itself a really comprehensive body of work. So we really need, it would be really good for residents to understand the challenges that we face, and that's why we have a highways communication plan. So we can actually communicate the reasons why we adopt the policies and the asset management strategies that we do, and it's in that communication plan. But if we need to do a bit more work on that and getting those messages out there, then we're very happy to take that on board.
Thank you. I think if I could just come back on that, I think just being able to say to people, we know that this road is destroying your car. We know that this is dangerous for your children. We've reported it. In the grand scheme, it's in the top 10% or it's in the top 20%. And I think just being able to understand to people where this road fits into the wider Medway picture, that might be something perhaps to consider. Thank you. The other point I wanted just to ask is on page 58, obviously Sussex Drive is in my ward. I was really interested, myself and Councillor Peake are often talking about vehicle access onto green spaces. And we've had a huge amount of issues in our ward this winter around green spaces and vehicles. I'm really pleased to see what's been done in Sussex Drive, but I just wondered about, how that was being rolled out and that conversation around green spacing and vehicle access and that kind of work. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, you raise a really valid point, and it's something that arrives in my inbox very regularly in terms of protecting those spaces. Sometimes they're managed by green spaces, so we have to work closely with them in terms of protecting those, but sometimes they're actually highway assets and verges as well. And yes, we've done a number of these. We did one out at Halling quite recently around the primary school. Sussex Drive is the example you're given there, and we've looked at other sites in Strood and Chatham as well. We don't actually have a formal policy on protecting these green spaces, but I think we all agree it's something that is appropriate. And I will have those discussions with the portfolio holder in terms of how we fund those going forward. But I think we all completely recognise that the occasions where vehicles do encroach onto those green spaces is causing big problems for everyone and for recreational use as well. So it's very much on our radar.
Yeah, I think, whether it's a direct action, but certainly for the minutes around, further feedback on that activity, because we've certainly had Green Spaces officer come to look at the ward with us and also spoken with the police as well. So I think it does feel that it's a kind of cross-party, cross-working group piece of work that, would be really useful to take forward. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Tijan.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your report. I note the report make reference to capital projects carried out between 2022 and 2023, which is very much welcome. However, I see that you state that more information will be provided with regards to the improvement projects in relation to safer and healthier streets. Now, my question is, what is the budget for the implementation of this safer and healthier streets project, and what's the funding source?
Thank you, Chair. Members may be aware that the Safer Healthier Streets capital budget went through the council approval process. I'm not quite sure off the top of my head what that figure was, but that was an approved capital budget. Obviously, there has been spend on that because we're delivering Safer Healthier Streets projects, but there is some residual budget for that we'll be working with members to identify further locations to take forward. We also have local transport plan capital funding as well, which we can also use and is fully justified for that sort of spend as well. So it's a combination of a dedicated capital budget that was approved last year, and other capital budgets that we have available to us in the forthcoming year to take forward further projects.
Sorry, Chair, I'm going to come back. Can we have the figures? Do you know how much it is and the actual source?
This is capital budget that the council has allocated to the Safer Healthier Streets scheme. Happy to come back to you on that, but that budget is a published budget and it's been part of the approval process and the governance process. But yeah, we can come back to you with a figure on that. And obviously it's captured as part of our quarterly budget monitoring reports as well. So members will be cited on the expenditure on those budgets.
Councillor Peake.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to back up my colleagues, Councillor Cook's concern about what I would term as the abuse of green spaces. It's amazing how many people just don't give up, but it is an issue for those that do care. I look forward to seeing a strategy. If you have that point of reference that we could use as a point of focus, I actually think that would help us. My actual question to you is, can you just spell out the process of reporting a pothole? By sheer coincidence today, my wife's daughter's colleague, on her way to work, hit a pothole. When she came out of it, she's got a busted tyre. She could not get to work for a considerable amount of time. Obviously, this is not good for the business that she needs to go into work for, and now she's got a cost of repairing that tyre. It was mentioned I was a councillor, but there's also quite a lot of cynicism. Oh, what's the point? Is this going to go into some kind of... If I do bother to make a complaint, it would just go into the ether and it won't be taken up. So some reassurance, please.
Thank you, yes, and thank you to my colleague for just clarifying that. We do take those service requests corporately, so we encourage people to go through the official corporate customer contact for Medway. Obviously, we can get requests directly as well, so we're more than happy if members have particularly concerns in their ward to contact us directly, and we have a frontline services inbox where we can take receipt and log those as well. So there's two ways, either directly from the customer through our customer contact, or via their ward member, and they can come directly to us for reporting those.
So yeah, I did pass on the ward. It wasn't in my ward. I did pass on who those ward members are. I'm hesitating as how am I going to say this, because obviously I appreciate all the officers work really hard, they're inundated with work, but again I just got this concern that if they do put it through on some complaint to customer service or whatever, your capacity, no matter how you have a desire to work hard to get through your work and do a really good job, but my concern is maybe he's just got so much to do that this will be just another comment that doesn't really get your attention, because there's a lot to cope with.
I appreciate and understand the point you make. What I would say is that obviously and a lot of these concerns are rooted in safety, aren't they? So actually, if a customer reports a pothole which is a safety issue to us, then clearly that is recorded, that is logged, and that is processed by our highways team. So it would be disappointing if comments or service requests like that do get lost, and I don't think they do. But if members do have any concerns or they're contacted by their residents who feel like they're not getting the service, then please do contact us. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we absolutely need to encourage residents not to try and second guess the system. There's no way that Michael and his team can do anything about something that hasn't been reported to them in the first place, and we have, there will be a triaging process in terms of prioritising those reports. So I think you've got to give them a chance to get it right before we criticise them for getting it wrong. Any other member? Councillor Field.
Thank you, Chair. And I did, as somebody who receives an annual update of Modern Asphalt magazine, I always, as a member of the Chartered Institute of Highways and Transportation, I really do appreciate discussion in Scrutiny. I know we've had quite a discussion around potholes, and obviously potholes is the number one thing that we're getting on there, particularly obviously at this time of year. But I just wanted to focus on, understand around supporting a couple of other modes of transport. So the first one would be, and it does reference it actually in terms of resurfacing, but actually the activity to support the reliability of bus services. Quite often the biggest issue we get from the operator is there's too much traffic. How do we incorporate that within the contract? The second one, I must admit, in 2021, I did send a cheeky FOI in when my mum was stuck indoors for a week during a period of snow weather. And it talks about the winter maintenance, and that focuses on road carriageway. I just wanted to understand how much we do focusing on footways. That's probably focused more on town centres, but actually, footways are a priority for many people who haven't got access to a car and to do those small trips to the shop, etc., in times of disruption. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Field. In terms of your question on public transport and bus routes, were you thinking in terms of highway maintenance, in terms of some sort of prioritisation?
Well, just prioritisation, but also those small schemes. So you show small schemes that are supporting different modes, and some great examples there. But as part of the highway maintenance, of those small schemes that we can seek to prioritise within the budget.
Yes, absolutely. And I think some of our other funding streams come into play here around the bus service improvement plan as well. So as you know, that bus service improvement plan will come up with a strategy for improving public transport, and undoubtedly roads, carriageways, accessibility is a key part of that. And if we secure any more funding, then clearly that plays into those schemes that emerge from that strategy. In terms of your comment around footways, yes, absolutely, really important. Our budgets are severely constrained, and the the priority, the focus is on carriageway resurfacing because that generates the most road safety issues for us. But we also acknowledge that footways do need consideration as well. And I think we need to be a little bit clever in terms of how we maximise opportunities for improving the surfacing of our footways as well. So it's things around new developments that come forward, Section 106 contributions, local transport plan funding contributions. And if we're doing other schemes, capital schemes, that are funded, are not funded from highways, is there opportunity to look at the surrounding area and make some accessibility improvements as part of that scheme, and that will include resurfacing footways as well. So yeah, completely understand the importance and we agree with that.
Any other member? So just want to pick up on the social media accounts and commend the Medway Highways account. I think it's actually very good in terms of keeping people updated, and it's certainly a resource which I retweet frequently and share with residents, and it's something that people should be encouraged to look at. Just one thing, I realise this report is covering 22-23. I just wonder whether this is something that maybe Jerry can offer some insight on in relation to page 28 of this report in 69 of the agenda pack about the sort of flooding and the action on flooding and the clearing of gullies. I'm just aware that this winter just hopefully coming to an end, although taking a long time to clear the decks. We've had 9 named storm events, and that climate change is becoming an increasing sort of factor in the thinking around all sorts of pieces of infrastructure, and just whether there's any observations or learnings from that, because I'm aware in Rochester, for example, on the Esplanade, there was a gully in a soakaway which took a long time to clear, and I think partly there may have been a mechanical cause, but what was the greater cause was the remarkably high river levels that we were experiencing, well above usual tide levels. So just if there's anything that we can sort of look forward to in next year's report that might reflect on.
I don't know if there's anything to look forward to, but I mean, if you do read the press, you will see that I mean, we have had a wet year this year, and the system is plagued by undercapacity, really. So we have a lot of combined Victorian drains, and some of the road network flows into that. You know, often the gullies are emptied very well, but even when they're free-flowing gully, it's everything downstream that's causing the problem, really. And I think, I mean, we are putting more focus on that now, and you're right with things like soakaways and stuff, but capacity is just a terrible problem, and I'm afraid the infrastructure with these higher storm events just isn't up to it, really. I'm not sure that's what you wanted to hear, though. But.
Well, it's certainly what I feared, but yeah, I think that, yes, it's just things likely to get worse before they get better. Vice Chair, do you have a proposal?
Yes, thanks, Chair. My proposal is the committee is asked to note the contents of this report and the annual review for Year 6 of the Highways Infrastructure Contract as set out in Appendix 1.
Is that supported? Agreed? Thank you. We move on to item 8 on the agenda, which is the Council Plan Performance Monitoring Report and Strategic Risk Register Summary Quarter 3 2023-24. That's pages 85 to 150 in your agenda pack, and Mark is going to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. The report summarises the performance of the Council Plan measures that fall under the remit of this committee for Quarter 3 2023-24. There are 15 Council Plan measures of success under the remit of this committee. These are presented in Appendices 1 and 2. We are reporting on 14 measures this quarter, and 1 measure is data only. Of the council plan measures we are reporting on, 50% met or exceeded their targets, 14.3% were slightly below target, less than 5%, and 35% were significantly below target. The report also presents a Q3 review of strategic risks, Appendix 3. There were no changes to the strategic risk scores this quarter, and Cabinet received this report on the 13th of February 2024.
Thank you. Any member? Councillor Etheridge.
Thank you, and thank you for the report. It's only just a quick comment, and I'm looking for some clarification, really. There are still a number of references within the report to either Homes England or the HIF in terms of funding. Shouldn't this now be removed? Thank you.
Yeah, I think obviously it was done in this financial year in terms of looking back, but I can assure you it won't be in next year's monitoring, because obviously we are well and truly out of that financial year. But you're correct in that observation. It's just a look backwards rather than forwards.
Councillor Nestorov.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of questions. One is on page 117 of the report. It states that the number of jobs created and safeguarded was only 11 out of 150, which was the target. What measures are being taken so we can make sure that we create more jobs for the next quarter?
Thank you. One of the things that we've been doing this year is looking forward to next year in regard to how we actually monitor this and how we actually record the numbers. So it's through some of our partners located in Kent who are now becoming Brand Kent. So there's a whole change this year. So we are currently looking at that. A lot of it is linked also to what Councillor Edwards was talking earlier about in terms of an inward investment strategy, looking at town centres, jobs, the way we procure, and so on and so forth. So that is in train at the moment. So we're hoping to be a bit more refined in the way that we monitor those jobs and also how we keep them. But I don't have the answer right now, but it's something that we're looking at for next year's.
I have one more question. Thank you for the answer. Second question is page 122. It says that 331 private sector properties have been improved as a result of council intervention. That's half the targeted number out of 600. Again, what is the reason for this low number? Is it the lack of people reporting it to the housing team, or is it because tenants are not reaching out, or is it because private one-word property are not checked?
Yeah, thank you for your question. So this is one that I need to have a conversation with the performance team around. So our overall target for this measure for the year is 900. That's the target for the year. I'm unsure why it's showing 600 specifically against quarter three. Our total year to date is something like 830. I can't recall a specific number. So it's broadly on track to meet the target. What I would say is demand for support from tenants in the private sector is increasing and has increased significantly over the last couple of years, particularly with the awareness around things like damp and mould. And I think we need to have a look at the service that we're delivering there, how it compares to other local authorities. There is always a bit of in some areas, there is a reluctance from tenants to report issues through to the local authority. But in local authorities, there's also a lack of capacity sometimes to deal with all the issues that they're presented with. So there's a real combination of things that happen around that sector. And what we focus on really is kind of is working with landlords, so through our landlord forum to engage with them and talk to them about the standards that we expect to see as a local authority, how they can get support with assisting their tenants to manage their tenancies effectively, and we also look at things like tenant accreditation for residents who are renting in the private sector, to give them awareness of what their rights are and what sort of service that they can expect from their landlord. So I think there's a slight presentation issue in the report, which I'll take away and discuss with the performance team, but it's a really complicated picture across the whole sector there as to the challenges.
just to come back on that. So it's basically a mistake in the report. It's much more cases than they are listed here.
Yeah, so the value I believe is right for the quarter. It's the target and the red that I need to take a bit of an issue with, unfortunately. So I'll pick those up and ensure they're right for the next version of the report.
If I can just make a suggestion, maybe is there a way to encourage tenants to report this to the council, like more information about how dangerous mold can be, more information that they can hold their landlords to account and the landlords need to fix this property, like things like that.
Yeah, so absolutely. So we did some awareness raising around condensation and damp and mould. We've got quite effective literature and leaflets that we can provide to tenants about reasonable steps that they can take, when they need to escalate things to the local authority for a bit of an opinion. There's lots of information published on our website, and as I said, we do engage with a number of front-facing, public-facing things around tenant accreditation and work with the sector more broadly to just encourage awareness. But not all tenants will bring things to the local authority's attention.
Councillor Croser.
Sorry, I have difficulty in hearing. Beg your pardon. Thank you for the report. Just, I wonder whether it's possible for you to give me separately some contact details for somebody within the Friends Group support team. I noticed you've got a mention here of support you give to Friends Groups. We've just recently organised a Friends Group for Deangate Ridge. And I understand the officer that runs the Friends Group or gives information to the Friends Group is retiring or was moving away. I wonder whether you separately could give me some contact details for that so we could engage with that forum. Thank you.
Yes, we will do that. Yeah.
Councillor Cook.
Thank you. I think, again, thank you. There's so much in here and, reading through it's like, yes, this is what people are concerned about. Yes, this is essential. Following on from my previous question on the previous area, I was particularly taken on page 91 to the area on litter. It's another one of those huge issues that really concerns people, that people are talking about all the time. Again, really grateful for the understanding about the metrics, the number of site inspections, but noting that the percentage there's fallen slightly. I can see the response that as soon as something is shown, it's then reported to Norse and action's being taken. But I firstly just wanted that reassurance for our residents in our own ward and those sort of feeding back on here, that of those 1,200 sites, it is across the breadth and width of Medway, and that all the different areas are being considered. You've said the sort of lots of different areas are, but are physically geographical. Will my ward be visited? Will someone else's ward be visited? And then the fact that that's going down, what are we doing together to ensure that is being addressed, because it really concerns people. I have got a second question, but I'll stop there for now, Chair. Thank you.
I think we're going to have to take that one away, Chair, if that's okay, unless it's in Ruth's part of the world. We'll take that one away if that's okay, Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that. That's really appreciated. It is just, constantly in our inboxes and a real concern. The second one is on page 119. I'm particularly interested in the comment on NEETs and on the difficulty of the data set of knowing where young people are and what young people are doing. The reality that we've got 242 young people that we're aware of, but then 335 whose activity is unknown. I can see the comparator with national and local data, but just a little bit of reassurance. For example, if a young person starts with a training provider and then leaves that training provider, are they then lost into the system? How are we following up? How are we making sure that data is as rigorous as it can be? And then the response in relation to the re-engagement of that workforce. Thank you.
It's a challenge. It's a huge challenge, and I've got to admit, we try and look at national statistics and we try and keep up with, try not to be worse than, but absolutely, because it takes bodies. We have to go out physically looking for people. We have to obviously reach out to other stakeholders. So the only thing I can assure you is that we sweat the assets as much as possible in terms of other people that can also help, working with other agencies, etc. But it is hugely challenging across the country. But again, we're doing well, if you like, for what you would expect for Medway, but obviously we're always trying to achieve more, but it is difficult because you just need the resources and the if you like, the bodies to go out there and actually find people and collect that data. Yes, it is challenging, I'm afraid.
Thank you. No, I really appreciate that. I think the conversation for us all is, you know, whose responsibility is that across all of our committees, across all of our work. I'm conscious of our work as corporate parents. I'm conscious of the work across to the Children and Young People's Committee. And I think, you know, the fact that it's challenging, I really see. I think the question there is, and what next, and how can we be certain that we're always pushing? And so just to flag that, you know, seeing it on there is so important, and to keep watching that, and just to urge that anything that can be done to keep that focus is really appreciated. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Any other member? Councillor Tijan.
Thank you, Chair. Just on page 125 and 154, housing targets. I understand that the housing target is only advisory. So my question is, this target we have from 1675, which we haven't met, probably will never meet for quite a long time, whether that will be changing soon to become an advisory or not.
Yeah, so the target that we get is advisory, but it is the methodology that's well accepted, and quite a lot of work is needed to deviate away from any kind of government targets around homes. So I think the new iteration of the council plan will be presented to members within the next couple of months. We'll be taking a different look at the way that we structure our council plan, and a fresh look at the priorities. So it'll be focusing more on things that the council is doing to encourage housing growth in its area, rather than just reporting on an indicator that's kind of set by national government, and we're always realistically likely to struggle to meet.
Sorry, so is that target likely to change?
The focus of the next council plan will be around things that are more in the council's control. So there will always be a national indicator. There will be similar indicators across public health, across children's services, which we will always pay reference to. But the actions that the council can actually control will be the focus for the new iteration of the council plan.
Any other member? Just take the opportunity then to highlight on page 122 one of the indicators on number of households with dependent children and bed and breakfast accommodation, and the target is 0 and the value is 0, and you can't do better than that. And I think it's, you know, to be commended the actions that have been taken that have got us to that place, because it's such a debilitating thing, and I think, you know, something that really harms life chances for young people. The idea of being put in bed and breakfast accommodation, completely inappropriate for anyone, but particularly for families. So just to highlight that, I think that's a real positive to take away from that report as well. Vice Chair.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Okay, 2 recommendations here. The committee asks to consider the Q3 2023-24 performance against the measures used to monitor progress against the Council's priorities, appendices 1 and 2. And secondly, the committee asks to note the Q3 2023-24 strategic risk summary at appendix 3.
Is that supported? Agreed? Thank you. We now move on to item 9, Capital Budget Monitoring Round 2, 2023-24. That's on pages 151 to 180 of your agenda report pack, and Andy is going to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the results of the 3rd round of capital monitoring. This has already been presented to Cabinet on the 13th of February. Draw your attention to section 5 on pages 152 and 153. These tables show the total capital budget for the whole authority, just for context, and the funding of that budget. That's table 1 and table 2 respectively. But the result of the third round of monitoring across the council is a projected underspend of 32.597 million. But of that, 32.54 relates to schemes within the control or responsibility of this committee. And the majority of that actually relates to the Innovation Park Medway. Underspend is just how it's showing. What it means at the moment is we have decided as a council to pause that scheme, to review what is going on and look at what we do in the future. So at the moment, as there's no spend projected, we are showing that. Obviously, the results of that will be brought back to members to make decisions, and at that point we'll then decide what we do with the actual budget. So it's a temporary measure showing that. Some other variances just to mention there, there's 430,000 overspend projected for the operational depot site. That has been reported previously, and that's on page 163. And there's a further small underspend showing against the Rochester Pier salvage scheme, and that's shown on page 159. There's the scheme successfully completed under budget, which is good news. And then just one small other thing, which is under member priorities on the hauling Bishop's Palace, and there's an underspend there because the scheme which was set aside for some railings to be put in there, unfortunately Heritage England has refused to grant consent, so that scheme is unable to go ahead really. It's worth pointing out that the schemes shown for Medway Development Company are those schemes for which they are carrying out work on behalf of the council. They have a much larger schemes which are shown in Appendix 1, which are their schemes for which the council provides funding via loans. Section 8 details Section 106 developer contributions, that's on page 166, and there's obviously a load of budget changes shown under Section 9. They are budget changes since the last report for round 2. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any member. Councillor Etheridge.
Thank you. I'll take you to page 180 where we're looking at the project, the Strood Civic Centre. I'm still not aware that a site has been actually located for the recycling of Kindy and its infrastructure. I'm just wondering if you can give us an update on that, please.
So you're referring to the bunker site? Yeah. So we're looking at that at the moment in terms of whether or not there's an opportunity to rehouse it within Gun Wharf once we've reopened Gun Wharf. But we're also looking at, like I said, releasing that because the main priority for that area is to get as much development and sustainable development in terms of viability as possible.
Any other member? Councillor Nestorov.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a question regarding the Innovation Park Midway, because I don't seem to understand exactly how that works. Obviously, after the failure of the project, something needs to be done about it. But are these 32 million allocated already, or how does it work? Could they be saved? Just can't understand what happens, where they are in space.
Thank you, Councillor. So before your time, this was obviously quite a long project. It's been over quite a long period of time. And initially, when the market was different, very different, so obviously a lot's happened in the last 5 years, financially, COVID, Brexit, and so on and so forth. The market has changed, hybrid working, etc. But when we originally looked at this, we looked at a sort of build it and they will come approach, which at the time was working for other councils. So we followed the example of Harlow, which had a similar innovation park and had had successes with that approach. So we followed along that, obviously had consultants as well that worked with us from a commercial perspective, pulled together the local development order and tried to bring a planning and marketing site that would enable that sort of build it and they will come. So that's where the tens of millions came from, around looking at gateway buildings and looking at other buildings to deliver. However, the world has changed. So rather than going on with that approach, unfortunately that approach hasn't worked. We've had to acknowledge that, and that's why we're pausing to review and look at potentially looking at other providers that can do that rather than the council in terms of borrowing our own money and taking that risk as well. So we're now looking at what we have and what we have control of, which is the land, and then also maybe looking at other people in the market who have the commercial experience in this very different world now to look at that separately. But obviously it stays there until we know for sure that we don't need it. So it's a bit confusing in the presentation. Apologies for that. It's an underspend, as Andy has said. But until we know for sure we are not doing that, and that's the process we're looking at, it will stay on the books.
So my understanding is the money are allocated and they are staying on the books until a decision is made. Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Any other member? In which case I'll just take the opportunity to express my delight on page 152 to see that the forecast spend in future years for the so-called Members' Priorities Fund is £0. Members' Priority Fund, but also known as Alan's Secret Wallet, which I think some of us were completely unaware of its existence, while others were able to dip into it with gay abandon. So great to see the back of that and the start of hopefully more rigorous processes going forward for those things. So thank you, Andy. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. So there are two proposals here. It is recommended that the committee notes the results of the third round of the capital budget monitoring for the year 2023-2024. And it is also recommended that the committee notes the changes made to the capital programme as set out in 9.1 to 9.3 of the report.
Supported? Agreed? Thank you. Item 10, Revenue Budget Monitoring Round 3 2023-24 on pages 181 to 190 of your agenda pack, and Dave is going to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so the report was presented to Cabinet on the 13th of February, again, and summarises the revenue budget monitoring position for the third round of monitoring for 23-24. The result of that process was projected overspend of £11.35 million across the council. The services within this remit of this committee are reporting an overspend of around £500,000. The detail of that is set out in section 5, which starts on page 183. Changes to the level of general reserves are set out in section 7. Work has identified that there's £5.727 million in earmarked reserves that were no longer required for their original purpose, which Council has now agreed can be declassified and moved to general reserves. This brings the current level of general reserves up to £15.882 million. However, should the round 3 projected overspend of £11.359 million materialise, the Council's general reserve balance would stand at £4.523 million, which is some £5.477 million below the minimum balance set by the Section 151 officer. I won't say any more. Happy to take questions.
Any member? You've left us dumbstruck, Dave. That's
You're not the first committee to do this, don't worry.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that is, it's concerning to see the potential for those reserves to dip below the recommended minimum. Just maybe for the purposes, since we have a moment then, can you just explain the consequences of that? So it talks about it in terms of the section 151, the impact of reserves being below that level.
There's no kind of national kind of guidance about kind of what the minimum level of reserves is. It's a judgment call for the Section 151 officer to make. Phil has set that at £10 million. That's kind of really the rainy day fund, so to cope with these kind of overspends that crop up from year to year, and obviously isn't earmarked for any purpose other than that kind of when you get into the overspend position, that it's there to mop up those things. Obviously, we'll do everything we can between now and when we close the accounts to kind of review other reserves we might be able to kind of declassify if possible, any other external grants we've got kind of available that we could kind of use in the most effective ways, that we maybe haven't kind of plugged all into the kind of the forecast as they are, but in reality, I mean, it's going to be still going to be a significant overspend, and it may bring that level of kind of reserves below that minimum, and then that's for us to decide if we're happy with, I suppose, with that kind of reduced level, where it lands, or what we can do. But the plan would then be to kind of rebuild that up over kind of future years, albeit that's going to be incredibly difficult given our kind of current kind of financial position.
Yes, it's a pity that, as well as a secret wallet, Alan didn't have a secret sofa with some coins that we could rummage for down the back. Vice Chair, do you have a proposal?
I do. So we have 3 proposals here. The committee notes the results of the 3rd round of revenue budget monitoring for 2023-24. The committee notes that the Cabinet instructed the corporate management team to implement further urgent actions to bring expenditure within the budget agreed at full council. And finally, the committee notes that the council, at its meeting on the 29th of February 2024, agreed to declassify the following amounts currently held in earmarked reserves and transfer them to general reserves. Firstly, £4 million held in the South Medway Development Reserve. Secondly, £1 million held in the Transformation Reserve. And finally, £727,000 held in the Mosaic Forms Reserve.
Is that supported? Agreed? Thank you. Final item for this evening, item 11, the work programme on pages 191 to 210 of your agenda pack. And Nicola will introduce this item.
The work programme is set out at Appendix A, and there has been one addition to the work programme as set out in section 4.2 of the covering report. Thank you.
Any member? Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. The committee is asked to note the report and agree the work programme as set out at Appendix A to the report, and the committee is asked to note the action log as set out at Appendix B to the report.
Is that supported? Agreed.
Agreed.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your time this evening. Thanks for some excellent questioning of portfolio holder and holding to account there. And I wish you all a safe journey home and hope that you manage to stay dry en route. Thank you. Good night.